Oh yeah! Okay, welcome back to another tutorial. Bear with me here if I'm stumbling over my words. Ada and I have been out on the trails filming tutorials all day. It's been an awesome day of riding. We've had some great conditions and I'm really excited to get into this one. In this video we're going to talk about drops, but not just drops. We're going to talk about how things need to change when we start doing slower, more technical drops. Okay, this is another question that came from our Mental About Mountain Biking community on Telegram. Shout out to Steve. Steve wanted to know what changes when we're riding slow drops versus riding in with a little bit more trail speed. Specifically, he mentioned he's got this fear, and this is a completely legit fear that lots of other riders I speak to have. I've felt this fear myself as well, but it's a fear of the nosediving, why the back wheel is still hung up on the ramp or on the upper surface of the drop. So we're going to discuss some techniques to help avoid getting hung up on the drop, even when we're pedaling in at slower speeds. So this video is for the rider that already feels comfortable riding off drops like this at a jogging pace. You understand the basic dropping technique, which we're going to review in just a second, and you're ready to perhaps take on some more technical drops, but you're looking to do it in a way that feels more controlled and inspires more confidence. If that's you, stick around. Even if it's not you, stick around anyway. You might learn something for the future. Cool. So we're starting off here in a skills area. So the run in is really good. It's nice and straight, consistent. This is slightly downhill, so we know speed's not going to be a problem. Our run out is also nice and straight. Yeah, it's downhill, but we've got plenty of time to shut down the speed and slow down. So that's awesome. We're going to really quickly review just the main components of doing a drop. And this is the kind of the dropping technique we'd use for a straightforward linear drop like this. When I say linear, it means the height of the drop is about the same as the distance. That means gravity is going to take us on a nice arc down. Things are going to be pretty simple. So all we're going to have to do this drop is press down through our pedals and then poke the bike forward slightly. Press and poke. The press just helps us unweight our tires slightly, and then the poke helps us get the bike forward from the upper surface out into the air so the wheels can drop evenly. When we get down to the landing, there's going to be a slight impact, so we might think about absorbing the bike back underneath us into that centered body position. Press, poke, absorb. I'll show you what that looks like here. Okay, cool. We're going to do one more demo. Regular drop-in technique at, say, jogging pace off this bigger drop here. Making sure we're in a gear that's hard enough to be stable and to help us get enough speed for the drop is also really important. I'm going to try and do my pedaling early so I can be level pedal, stable, plenty of time to set up before the drop. Okay, sweet. That one's easy to go big on. That was regular speed. Now we're going to look at what changes when we start turning down the speed. I'll show you, then we'll dig into the what and the why afterwards. Awesome. So hopefully that was a good demonstration of the differences there. As I turned down the speed, I had to adjust something else. So I like to think of it really simply as two levers. And by the way, I got this analogy from Darren down at Endless Biking. Fantastic coach, go and see him if you're on the North Shore. Two levers, speed on one side, rider input on the other. So when I say rider input, that's the press and the poke. So a general rule or principle we can apply to drops of all shapes and sizes is more speed, we need less rider input, meaning we actually have to do less of the press and of the poke. I always like to at least do something, at least dip my heels, at least move the bike forward a little bit, because that ensures I stay in control. I'm active, I'm moving around on the bike, I'm not just freezing up and letting the speed do it. But in general, when we have more speed, the speed is really what helps get the bike from that upper surface out into the air so that it can drop evenly. So sometimes rolling into a drop with a little bit more speed, or one like this with a long run in, can feel easier than a slower drop. Now you will have noticed there, as I turn the speed down significantly, I needed to turn my rider input up. I needed to do more to physically get the bike off the drop. So more energy in my press, more energy in my poke forward. Awesome. Most of you watching this have probably got that down packed pretty good for now. So next we're going to talk about, well, what happens if we go even slower into a drop like this? What happens if it was an uphill entry or a corner before, or maybe some roots? I can think of some good examples around here. We're maybe going to go and ride some of them afterwards. We need to adjust this technique slightly. Rather than just doing the basic press and poke, if we're going really slow, that's still not going to be enough to get the wheels out into the air before the front wheel starts dropping and we maybe experience one of those nose dives that we're fearing. So rather than just press and poke the bike out ahead, we're going to press, then we're going to absorb slightly. So it's a little bit like when we're jumping. If you've ever done a jumping lesson, we press into the ramp, we absorb the bike into the air. What I mean when I say absorb is we soften off the tension in our arms and legs, and we allow the bike to come up into this space between our torso and the bike by bending our arms and legs a little bit. So we press into the bike, unweight the tires, absorb that back wheel up into us a little bit, and then poke the bike forward. And that's how we're going to ensure that this back wheel, still being on the drop as the front wheel starts to go down, doesn't buck us forward, because we're absorbing it up into that space, and our torso should still stay stable on that nice consistent plane. Let me show you that in action. Our 3 words to keep in mind when we're practicing this: press, absorb, poke. Okay, just for fun, I'm going to pretend there's a corner before this drop. Maybe give it a bit more about a practical application when we get to some more technical drops on real trails later on. Same 3 steps: press, absorb, poke the bike forward. Okay, nice and slow. So practicing slow drops in this way, in a controlled environment like this, a practice area if you've got it, or a trail you're already confident with, is the way to building confidence with slow drops. Instead of just riding at full trail speed, what we actually do by changing the variables, by reducing our speed or maybe adding a corner in beforehand, is practice a slow drop without committing to the real thing on the trail first. So we're able to practice that new skill set without feeling like we have to commit to a really big, really high consequence drop. So I really suggest you try this. Build it up step by step like we've done in this video. Less speed, more rider input. And if we get to a point where our speed's really, really slow, we're gonna have to add in that absorb in between the press and the poke. Remember, that absorb helps soak up the pressure that's created as the front wheel starts to dive, the back wheel's still on the drop. We soak it up with our knees, with our leg suspension, so that it doesn't push our whole body forward and we feel that nosedive. Cool, cool. Now we're going to go out and explore some actual slow drops on some actual trails. Let's do it. Okay, we're at a drop here, a real wild drop out on a trail here in Squamish. This is called another roadside attraction. Short, sweet little trail. This drop's interesting because it kind of starts with a bit of an uphill to get up onto the platform here. It's quite blind as we come in. We go over an old log and then we land in a bit of a rocky transition there. This one is actually quite easy to pump beforehand and get quite a lot of speed for. Works well if you actually land a little bit deep into that landing, skip some of those sharp edged rocks. That said, I'm going to try and go a little bit slower on this one so that we can talk about the slow dropping technique. As I come in a little slower, some things I'm going to think about on my run in is making sure I get that pedaling done earlier. So I'm going to make sure I'm in an appropriate gear to get up here with a little bit of speed and hopefully be set up by like a bike length or 2 away from the edge. Level pedals so I can think about the technique we talked about at the drop zone there, that press, absorb, poke the bike forward. Awesome, let's do it. The great thing about drops like this with a nice steep landing is that even though we're going slow, quite high, there's potential for a lot of impact there on the landing. That's kind of soaked up by that nice steep landing. We keep moving downhill, carry that momentum downhill instead of taking it up through our body. I'm going to do one more demo here, then we'll move on to an even bigger slow drop. Okay. That's about as slow as I want to go on that one. Sweet. So we're here have a super cool feature. I wanted to include this drop in this video because it's a great example of a quote unquote slow drop that's really hard to do slow. As you can see here, quite a tall drop coming off this steep rock slab. I'm a little bit nervous just to walk down, but my landing is quite close to my takeoff, even though it's quite tall. So it's taller than it is long. To get into that sweet spot there and really hit that nice transition, I'm going to want to go quite slow with this one. So my plan of attack for this one is actually to come in nice and slow. This is really grippy, this rock slab. So controlling as much of that speed as I can. As I near the edge of my drop, I'm going to get a little bit lower in preparation. You guys can't see in the frame there, but there's two cracks on this rock. When I get to this crack I'm standing on, that's like go time, I'm about a bike length away. When I get down to the edge here, I'm going to do a small press and a small poke. I'm not going to need to do too much of an absorb, because as soon as I get off those brakes at the last crack that's about that far away from the edge, what, 1.5 feet, 2 feet, as soon as I get off those brakes, the bike's essentially going to be out there in the air ready to drop both wheels at the same time. So there's not too much risk of the back wheel getting hung up, the front wheel diving on this one. That makes me feel good. The real risk on this one, although like the place I can see a lot of people going wrong, is actually getting off the brakes too early, perhaps out of that fear of not making the gap. Then we're going to go deep into this one, land flat. It's going to be very hard to remain stable on the bike. Okay, so keys for this one is a good setup, staying calm, staying composed, a little press, little poke, just to stay active, just to get the bike out there into the air, and big absorb as we land on the landing. Cool. On that composure piece, I'm going to make sure I take a big exhale as I go through my point of commitment, which is up on top of the rock slab there, and I continue to breathe all the way down. That's going to keep me nice and calm, relaxed and composed. Okay, let's do it. Oh yeah. Whew, that feels good. I'm gonna be honest, that was my first time doing something that big since I broke my back 8 weeks ago. So it feels good to be back in action, and that felt really smooth. So just to summarize what happened there, or what I needed to do there, because this drop has a steep takeoff, I didn't need as much rider input. As you might remember from the start of this video, more speed usually means we need less rider input, because the speed helps get us out into the air, like I said at the top there. So less rider input. That said, I always like to do something, because that helps me avoid freezing up and just holding on, hucking and hoping for the best. Doing something helps me be active, be in control as a rider. So I still do that little press, little poke forward, as you would have seen in the side frame there. And then as I land on that landing, I'm absorbing the bike back into that centered position, ready for whatever comes next. In this case, we've got this nice built up corner here. Sweet, let's go do some more drops. Sweet. We're up here on a trail called Cakewalk in Squamish. If you're from Squamish, if you've been to Squamish, you know this trail's got a couple of very nice drops on it. But there are also a couple of drops that are a little bit more technical than your standard kind of linear setup drop. This first one we've got to here is a bit of a classic slow drop. It's not slow in the sense that we can't get speed or the trail doesn't give us speed, but it's slow in the sense of like, I want to go slowly off it because of what's coming next. Maybe we can pan the camera down and show the run out there. That kind of, a bit of a steep, rocky, rooty shoot before a sharp left-hand corner. So I definitely want to be able to go slow off this one. I'm also considering the fact that this takeoff here, it's relatively flat. Our landing too, it's not super steep. So going off this one, I'm going to be thinking about that slow dropping technique we've already talked about. Small press down through the feet just to help unweight the tires slightly. I'm going to be absorbing the back of the bike up towards my torso. As the front wheel starts to drop, pressing the bike forward. Okay, so press, absorb, poke. I'm going to show you what that looks like here. Sweet, so hopefully you're able to see the technique there. I'm gonna do this a couple more times and just play around with the speed. This is a drop that we can definitely do at lots of different speeds. We can use the classic just kind of press and poke technique. Usually what happens when we do that though is we land really deep. The landing on this one's quite flat, so it doesn't feel nice. There's a lot of pressure there to absorb, and we usually end up being somewhat out of control for the steep little technical bit and left-hand corner coming next. So I prefer to do this one slowly, and rather than just press in and poke in, I press, I absorb the back wheel as it comes up towards my torso, absorbing that back wheel and getting the bike and my body down onto the landing earlier. Means I have more time to brake, less impact to absorb, and everything feels smoother afterwards. I'm going to give you another example, show you another angle of what this one looks like. Let's do it. Okay, drop it. Sweet, so hopefully you got some good demos there of doing this drop nice and slowly. That absorption, using your range of movement by bending the knees and absorbing the back of the bike, the back wheel up into you, is key to not having that horrible feeling of the front wheel drop in while the back wheel is still on the wood, and your torso, your center of mass, also being pushed forward, okay? By absorbing that pressure, I allow my torso to maintain that nice natural arc down to the ground without being pushed forward, okay? So getting really good at absorbing your bike, using your range of movement is key. As well as that, making sure you're actually coming into drops like this tall enough to have that range of movement. If we're already squatted down over our bike and we go to absorb something, it's kind of like riding a bike with not much travel. There's not much space there, so we're gonna get pushed forward, okay? Coming in nice and tall, press, absorb, poke the bike forward. Sweet, let's go get the next drop. Oh, I love this feature. Look at that view. Okay, another slow drop coming up. Got to pedal uphill into this one. Take a look. Ooh, nice. Okay, drop in. Nice, awesome. We're at the next drop here on Cakewalk, and this is the specific drop Steve over in our Mental About Mountain Biking community was talking about when he was talking about tricky slow drops. This one's got an uphill run in, you come around a corner, it's kind of blind. So from the start, it's kind of hard to know, well, what is the speed, what gear should I be in? And to get that setting up, or to get that setup done early is kind of key to having success off this drop. Let's go and take a look at the running quickly, and then I'll show you the rest of the feature. Hopefully you can hear me over this beautiful waterfall creek that's running today. But as you'll see, we come around a corner here over a bridge, and we've got some slightly flat or uphill ground to deal with before this right-hander. And then we're pretty much immediately into the drop from there. So this space here is really key to setting yourself up for success. I'm always thinking about getting myself into a gear that will allow me to accelerate while also still having something to press against on the pedals. So that stability we're looking for coming into a feature like this. Not too easy, not too hard. And ideally we want to set our speed, get our pedaling done early so that by the time we're coming around this corner, coming past these last couple of trees here, we're able just to coast on those nice level pedals in our taller neutral position. That's going to allow me to be nice and stable as I leave the drop surface here. As you can see from the landing, the delta's checking out down there. This one's a little bit steeper and it's also a little bit longer. That means there is more margin for error there. We can come off this one a little bit faster. Yeah, we're going to land deep and that impact's going to be harsher. It's probably still going to be okay. on the other end of the scale, we can also come off this one quite slow and hopefully then land in that sweet spot higher up the landing. It's going to be less of an impact, it's going to feel nicer, and we're going to have more time to prepare for either that jump that comes next or taking that corner out and around. Technique-wise, getting off this drop, it's going to be exactly the same as what we've been talking about. That slight press, just enough to one-weight the tires, absorb in the back wheel while poking the bike forward. Now in the little demos you just seen there, I towed my friend Eddie off this drop. And we're talking about kind of that poke, the angle of that poke. He mentioned that he felt like he poked the bike a little too far ahead. That led to him landing kind of in the back of his bike and having to adjust. What we want to do with that poke is really match the angle of the landing. So because this landing is a little bit steeper, I'm going to poke the bike forward and down rather than just forward like we would for a drop with a flat landing. So press, absorb, poke. I'm going to show you what that looks like here. Sweet, so now you've seen this drop at a few different speeds, really emphasizing that press, absorb, poke the bike down technique. We're going to ride out the rest of the cakewalk, have some fun. We'll probably get into a trail called 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗃 after this. That's got a couple of smaller, but maybe technical little single track drops on it. Then from there, we're going to get down into a classic to finish this tutorial, the airplane mode drop on the one-up trail down near the parking lot there. Let's do it. We're here at another pretty famous drop here in Squamish. This is on a fantastic trail called Airplane Mode, sponsored by One-Up Components. This drop's interesting. It's not a super slow drop, so it maybe doesn't fit this particular tutorial too much, but I couldn't ride past it for two reasons. One, it's super fun. Two, I think lots of riders kind of have it on their list. And actually there's three reasons. The third one is it's a bit unique in the sense that the trail actually starts just up there past my bike. So you don't actually have much of a run-in. And even though it is still it's a big gap, it's a lot of height there, it does feel like we're maybe coming in slow to this one. So there's definitely that confidence piece or that head piece there to work through. So about to do this drop here. If this is your first time here looking at this feature, riding this trail, I definitely recommend going and getting a warm-up lap in first, doing some other drops like we did today. Maybe even just riding out the rest of airplane mode. It's great to do a sight and lap on, then you can come back nice and warm and hit this drop. Don't recommend getting out of the car, especially if you drove up here, and then hitting a feature like this right away when you're cold. Not really going to set you up for success, unless it's something you feel confident doing. That's kind of okay. Sweet, so my tactic getting into this one, knowing that it's quite easy to overshoot and actually quite easy to get a little bit of speed as we roll in down this short downhill run in. I'm just going to do like a pedal stroke. Come into this one at maybe like a fast jogging pace, press and poke. I'm not going to have to do too much of an absorb because my speed's going to help get me out there into the air. I also know I've got a nice steep transition or landing. That's going to take a lot of the force when I hit the landing. Cool. Ah, such a nice one. Highly recommend. Might do it like once more, maybe get an angle from down here. I'll call it a day. Okay, sweet. So wrapping up here, I think an important thing to take note of is that often drops can be made really complicated, different techniques for different drops, and then often we can get into that overthinking analytical space where it's like, well, what type of drop is this? What technique do I need? Let's keep things super simple. We use that same dropping technique, press, poke for all drops. If we're coming in really fast, our rider speed is up, we're going to perhaps use less pressure, less energy with our rider input, the press and the poke. If the speed gets turned down, the more it gets turned down, the more we need to turn up that rider input. So the more active we need to be press and poke, we need to do more of the work to get the bike from the upper surface to the lower surface. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, if you're at a more advanced place in your riding progression, and you maybe are riding some really technical drops, some really slow drops, that's where we can start thinking about absorbing the back of the bike, using our range of movement as the front wheel starts to drop slightly, and the rear wheel is perhaps more or less up on the drop still. Press, absorb, poke. Again, the way to get better at this is to practice in a controlled, comfortable area first. Even on drops that are maybe rollable, practice doing them really slow. Get really good at this technique, play around lots with the speed, the rider input, the variables, and eventually with that mileage, the confidence is going to build to try some harder drops, some bigger drops like we've shown in this video today. As always, I don't claim to cover every aspect of dropping. We've really focused mainly on the technical skill component here, because that's a component I see it's kind of lacking in a lot of the riders I work with. There's obviously a whole lot we can do on the mental side in terms of mental strategies to stay focused, keep our mind on the task at hand, and embody a confident riding state. We can do loads in terms of our equipment setup, and we can obviously do some strength work to make sure we've actually got what it takes to take these impacts. It's something I've been working on post-injury. There's also a couple of other techniques, such as like the wheelie drop, which we can do off really slow drops. That's an awesome technique that deserves a whole video of its own, so I'm not even going to go there today. We're going to call it here. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd love to see you in our Mental About Mountain Biking Telegram community. It's a free space to connect with like-minded, like-skilled riders, ask questions, get tips, and receive feedback on your riding. We do a weekly remote coaching breakdown in there where we chat about other people's technique. There's the potential to chatter about your technique as well. If you're ready to deep dive, if you're ready to work with me, you can also check out our full circle coaching program and our global expeditions. Links to both of those ones are down below. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you out on the trails or on the next video.